They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no.
129 people die every day in this country from a drug overdose.
Why so serious?
Recovery can be fun.
Recover out loud. Break the stigma.
Host Holly and various guests discuss the important topics about addiction and recovery. They are not quote-unquote experts, but just real people telling real stories. Any or no addictions are welcome. Recovery Talk starts now.
Welcome to Recovery Talk. I'm your host Holly, and today, super excited. I have Bruce here co-hosting, and his girlfriend Hillary is also here. The mic's not really close to her, so I don't know if we can hear her that well. So me and Bruce have been friends for a few years. He is someone in long-term recovery. He inspires many and is a powerful story. He's very active in giving back within the recovery community. So with that being said, Bruce, so excited that you're here. Thanks for coming. Just want to get right into it, I guess. And so today we're going to be talking about the correctional system. So Bruce, if you just want to get started and tell us a little bit about your story, kind of before and where you are today in your recovery.
Well, thanks for having me, Holly.
Yeah, glad that you guys came.
Yeah, I'm glad I get to share. That's exciting.
It's always good to share your story. And
it's always good to put it out there. You never know who can help, and all we can really do is plant the seeds and let them grow. Continue to water them.
Exactly.
And my story probably goes way back to I was in trouble with drugs and alcohol early in life. Back in high school, getting kicked out of high school, suspended. I never wanted to hold a job, and I got caught up in addiction, but I got caught up in dealing and selling drugs, which led to different types of crime. So I spent many years in and out of the prison system. I would do a 2-year stint, and it was kind of like earning a stripe. I got to meet a whole bunch more people to do what I was doing, and more connections and more not. And I didn't really look at it as being an addict or anything like that. I looked at it as just life. I got caught selling dope. Someone told on me. And I would get out, and within a year or two, I'd never get off parole, and I had new charges for doing the same thing again. And then I realized that, well, maybe I had to tone it down. Maybe I had to do something different. And so my drug history, my drug use through those years was all trying to control it, all being managed, all being, trying to be a functional addict or a functional alcoholic, because it would get in the way of having a job, it would get in the way of relationships, it would get in the way of family, and my choices were always to go where I thought my friends were, which were the people with the drugs and partying. I didn't really want to change my life. After about 8 years in prison, when I got out, I managed to get a job and a college degree, and I managed to hold a job. But over the 9 or 10 years that I was free, you could see the steady decline in being a responsible, productive member of society versus a steady incline of the disease picking up where it left off. The use got heavy, and I'd learned different ways to hide it and different ways to conceal it. But at the same time, I wasn't able to hold a job. I wasn't able to stay in a relationship. I wasn't able to stay close to my family. Life was living a lie. And I never thought it was me who had the problem. I always thought it was those other people. They didn't see things my way. And at the end of that period, I went into a federal prison system. That was in the state system. I did 8 years. And then I did 12 years in the federal system. And in the federal system, I continued to do the same thing. I earned more stripes. I got to meet many people I didn't know, and I didn't play well with others, so I got transferred a lot, and I moved all over the country. I didn't really want to change my life. I didn't believe in a God. I was raised Catholic, and I believed in God, so to speak, but I believed in a damning God that I could sin just sitting here talking or thinking. Not a loving God or a caring God. And that's the way my life was. It was all about me. One day, a few years into the prison sentence, I wanted to change my life. I wanted to quit drugs. And at that point, I was running drugs in prison, doing dope, making hooch, and doing the whole 9 yards. And I wanted to stop doing drugs. And at that point, I didn't know what to do or how to do it. I wrote a bunch of letters. I combed the prison system. I read tons of books. I read a lot of books on psychology. I thought I needed a spiritual awakening. I searched for a God. And I went to the chapel, and in the chapel, every religious sect has their time. So I would spend, and I had a lot of time. I had 12 years to do, so I spent a lot of time trying to find God in each sect. And I would read the Quran, I would read the Bible, the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, and none of it gave me a spiritual awakening. None of it was what I was looking for. Prison doesn't offer a whole lot, but it does offer programs. It doesn't offer anything to you unless you seek it out. The resources that were available on state or federal level were only available if you went above and beyond your own looking for it. And that's not mainstream in there. Anybody who does that gets ostracized, especially because my first few years I was running with this crowd, and to just up and try to change, that just is abnormal, not normal in there. And it was abnormal as far as my thinking went, because all along I didn't like who and what I had become, but I never wanted to do nothing about it. Earlier in my life, there had been suicide attempts, overdoses, and a lot of that type of behavior. Now I'm changing my life and I want something different, and I'm in a prison setting and I don't know what to do. That's where I began the reading, the soul searching. After reading a lot of books, it was easier for me to pick out what I didn't like about me, and then it was to change it. All the negative behavior around me, I decided I really, really didn't want a part of any way, shape, or form, and breaking from that was difficult. It was the letters that I wrote and the resources I found in society, and those people who wrote back were the people that started me on a path of recovery. There were 12-step programs, there were self-help programs, there were different types of doctors and friends, a family that would send me information, and that's really where my transformation began. The 12-step programs really opened my eyes to how to change and a program to kind of follow. And from there, the resources in prison were slim. And I had been through a treatment in many different settings, in a state, in a federal, in the free world, voluntary, involuntary. I had been through many different treatments, but I never really thought I had an issue. And when I finally realized that I did, and that's when change was able to happen. I had to change my thinking. And changing your thinking isn't easy when your first thought is criminal. And if it ain't criminal, it's self-centered. So now what do you do and how do you change? And most of the people in your life at this point, because I had been doing this for a long time, most of the people I reached out to only knew, I had said this song and dance many times, so I didn't have a lot of support there. I had a loving family that always thought, you're a good guy, you just made bad choices. But, that in and of itself don't help me get well. So I seeked out many of their programs, and when you go deep into the program, I took parenting programs because they had kids. I went to all their 12-step programs. I went to all their church programs. It was many of the programs they had where volunteers came in that I had to seek and search out, and I had to fit certain requirements to be able to go to them. And it was those people that came in with a message that offered me hope. Every time I got out, and every time I got out of prison, I go back to the same old things, same old friends, same old playgrounds. I never changed any of that. It wasn't until the last time, after doing 12 years, because about halfway through it, I decided I wanted to do something different. And, even all the treatments and everything you've been through in prison, and all the tapes and movies you play off in your head, when I get out, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I'm going to avoid this person or that person, and all them changes. But when you get out, nothing went the way I envisioned it. Even when I made the right choices, stuff happened that made those poor choices. And I had to adjust on the fly. And I had to have a solid foundation. I had to have the good people around me.
What did you do differently the last time after you left?
This last time, and it's been several years, when I got out this time, I put different people around me, and I refused to go back to the way I was. I made a promise to myself that no matter what, I wasn't going to get high no more, no matter what. And I was going to go through whatever I had to go through, good or bad, that I was going to get to the other side. And I was going to take suggestions, and I was going to listen, because everything I had tried failed me on my own accord. So through the letters I wrote and through some of the programs I was involved in, I had very few good people placed in my life that were there. People who I trusted, because trust is really hard.
So I have some statistics on here about people who have been to jail. It says, as in the United States, France, people, they're locked up 7 times as much, 11 times as many as the Netherlands, and 15 times as many as Japan in the U.S. So that's kind of crazy. You know, just like looking at these statistics and how much it costs. I know one of them down here, it said something for like every $1 we spend on, let's see. Hold on. Found that every $1 spent on drug treatment in the community yields over $18 in cost savings related to crime. So instead of, you know, as a society spending $18 going towards the prison systems, it would only cost $1 to go towards those treatment centers. Do you think there's anything that, you know, in your opinion, from being on that side that could, you know, maybe open up some doors or change some of that stuff?
I think the biggest thing is having that real life scenario and having the foundation when you walk out. Previously, in any incarceration I ever had, I never really had a solid foundation or plan in place. Mm-hmm. I never really wanted to follow through on any of it other than thinking, well, I'm not going to drink. And when you hear people tell you this is okay and that's okay, but they didn't realize that once I started, I didn't stop. And having good people in my life who didn't promote that when I got out this time, that offered me. The average cost 10 years ago to house an inmate was $32,000 a year. That's a lot of money.
Yep.
The treatment that's offered, whether it be state or federal, to me is available if you seek it out. It's optional at best. And a lot of times you're going to run into the counselors and people in there who haven't been through it. And it's easy just to say whatever you want to say as long as you're saying the stuff out of the books they present you. And you're graduated and you're through. And it makes it real easy to get through. How do you do a real life scenario in the system? How do you really want to change your life? And some of that stuff was available. I guess the last time I went through it was near the end of that 12-year sentence. And the tools that I learned from there are the same type of behavior modification I had learned in treatment 15, 20 years before that. But this time I applied those principles. I took the new stuff and I watched what the people around me were doing. The whole thing was I had to learn how to change my thinking. And when that hit me, that I had to learn how to change my thinking, then it no longer became a matter of how do I get out of prison. Now my thought process was, how do I stay out of prison? And now that I've stayed out and I've been afforded opportunities, I now go back into the jails and the prisons and I go into treatment centers. And I think we lose the gap. I remember coming out and not having anywhere to turn. Now, you can go to some 12-step programs, but what do you do that first 24 hours when you get out is really crucial to what's going to happen. And especially someone like myself who was a career criminal. I had to make that choice and follow through on that. Now, if you're a young person coming out your first or second or even third time from short stays and you make them same choices, what's in place?
That 24 hours after is so crucial, you know, to making the life-changing decisions. Can you talk about, before we were talking earlier about the nonprofit that you were starting, if you just want to talk a little bit about that, kind of what that's all about. So
a passion of mine has been to assist and help people coming out of prisons and jails and treatment centers. That 5 minutes at a bus stop, that transport to get there, that plan when you get out. So what I had done is I put together a group of people and I got some backing. And the nonprofit I'm trying to start is a thing called the Freedom Project. What it is when we would reach the inmates while they're still in or the people in treatment while they're still in, so that when you get out, you immediately have a place to go, at least a resource center. And originally what I wanted to do was teach behavior modification classes, education classes, drug history. But after doing more research, what I found out in our area alone, in the state of Wisconsin and across the United States, there's 1 million reentry programs. There's a bunch of people out there doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And when I got out and I reached out to them programs, the pieces that I felt were missing most was that first 24 hours, that bus ride, if you say. But My nonprofit, what I want to do different is I would like a center that uses all the natural resources